All right, so let's move on to some more systems. So now we're going to look at what happens to our immune system as we get older and what happens to our renal system as we get older. So the skin of an older person can become more prone to infection because normally our skin secretes substances that sit on the top, okay? Now those substances, they sit on the top layer of our skin, is sometimes really good because it's antibacterial. So if you're no longer making those substances, it's going to make your skin more prone to infection, okay, because you've lost that protective kind of barrier. Your eyelashes can start becoming a little bit thinner. That means that it's going to stop them from working as well as your mechanical barriers, okay? Neutrophils, which are a type of white blood cell, and it's the most common white blood cell in the blood, and it's the first one that actually arrives at the site of inflammation, okay? So they all turn up and they get in there and they phagocytize, which means they gobble up anything that needs to be removed. So for example, microorganisms or bits of cells, pieces of protein that shouldn't be there, they go in there and clean that up. Now, as you get older, your neutrophil activity reduces. And in general, all of your macrophages, whereas they normally would phagocytize till the sun went down, they just generally phagocytize less, okay? So, which means that you're going to have maybe microorganisms hanging around longer than you would have otherwise, because your macrophages are not getting rid of them as effectively as before. Natural killer cells, one of my favorites. If you think back in 165, they're the ones, they're the white blood cells that go up to cells that don't look right and tell them to kill themselves or undergo apoptosis next to each other, face to face. So, yeah, so the ability of those cells to actually kill their target cells also decreases. So this is important because it means that you may have a cell laying around that is not quite right, and that could potentially turn into cancer, and your natural killer cell normally kills it for you, but because they're not doing that as well anymore, then that increases the chances of that particular cell then developing into a cancerous one. The thymus shrinks, we know that as people get older, and the thymus, remember, is where T cells go to mature. So, yeah. And overall, the literature says that you have less T cells and less B cells. Okay? Remember, T cells were part of our adaptive immune system, and they are cell-mediated defense. And then our B cells are also part of our adaptive immune system, and they make antibodies, so antibody-mediated. Right, so this picture is a really good summary of what kind of happens. I'm just going to put myself there somewhere so I'm not in the way. Some more age-related changes to the immune system. Yeah, so this mucous membrane is interesting too because so you produce kind of less mucus, which means that you're less capable of trapping microorganisms. So look, even dendritic cells slow down a little bit, so they're quite important as well. If you remember back to our immune system topic in 165, what their roles were. T cells, B cells, again, low in number. Your whole inflammatory response is turned down. Yeah. And I have seen in the literature that as you get older, you kind of develop a very low level of inflammation that is always there. Okay? So that's something that has popped up again and again. Your skin, we're going to look at skin a little bit in more detail in the tutorial, but just for now, it's going to be drier because you're not secreting that protective stuff over the top of it as much anymore. And then, yeah, it can get damaged easily. And then that means that there's more chance for bugs to come in and penetrate that barrier. Yeah, so the thymus, we know about it. And again, we saw in our skeletal system that the bone marrow is not pumping out cells as much as it used to. Yeah, so we know that already about the stem cells of the bone tissue. So yeah, so I guess this poses the question, you know, like you know, we always harper on about, you know, oh, you're older, you should be getting the flu vaccine and that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, I guess that's important because, you know, when you look at an older person, their immune system is turned down quite a lot. So I guess if there's anything that we can use to actually help them boost up their immune system is always going to be a good thing. So yeah, so that's where, I mean, they're not going to get as big as a response and vaccine immune response as a younger adult, but they will get some, and that's better than none, and it's also better than what they had to begin with. So yeah. Right, what are we looking at now? Oh, we're going to go back to the table, and this is what I added in. We lose lots of cells there. We lose B cells, T cells, macrophages. We lose them. They just go. They just die. We saw the thymus shrinking. We saw that the skin can also lose its integrity. So there are changes there. And then as a consequence of the losing cells in the immune system, that means that responses are not going to be as big, and they're going to take longer to happen, generally. All right. Let's look at now at the renal system. What happens there? So generally, blood flow is reduced to the brain, as you know. Oh, well, actually, we're going to get to the brain in a minute, but your kidneys get less blood as you get older. So less blood goes to your kidneys, which means that your nephrons slowly start to die away over time. And that means that your kidneys actually shrink. Yeah. So the glomerulus, which is the bundle of little capillaries that dump the plasma or the fluid into the Bowman's capsule, can also collapse. So that's going to be not a good thing. And also the filtration membrane loses its ability to filter as well. So it becomes not very good at selecting things. Also, your bladder is not as elastic as before, so which makes it hard to fully empty your bladder. Yeah. And also, as I said, overall, your sphincters overall lose tension. So let's have a look at some images related to that. Look at this. Here we have age, and then this is just the number of people that donated their kidneys. Look at this, number of nephrons. Look at that. By the time you get to 75 years old, look, you've only got 480,000 nephrons. Oh, sad, isn't it? So another thing that you can look at is something called glomerular filtration rate. So we know that blood goes into the kidney and then blood goes into the nephron or the Bowman's capsule. And then this here is a membrane. And so only certain things pass through here, right? How much stuff passes through to here is called the glomerular filtration rate. Now, normally it's about 125 mils per minute. But look, as you get older, you get less filtrate being made. And look at that. If your GFR is less than 15 mils per minute, you're said to be in kidney failure. Yeah. So even though our glomerular filtration rate reduces, it's still kind of normal. Yeah, but it does go down a lot. So this means that as you get older, the ability of you to get rid of the wastes that are in your blood goes down. Okay, let's look at some more pickies. Here we go. This is a younger kidney. And look, as you get older, look, your nephrons have shrunk, right? There's not as many of them and they've shrunk. And there's cysts. See there? It can be bumpy. Your kidneys can kind of shrivel up and be bumpy and have less nephrons. Okay? And another thing to be aware of as men get older, look at that. Your prostate gets bigger. And the problem is that if your prostate starts squeezing your urethra, it's going to make it very hard for you to get your urine out. Okay, just something. This is the normal growth of the prostate over time. All right, I've added some symbols there for the renal system. We lose our nephrons, our kidneys shrink, and the integrity of the filtration membrane is lost. So we're not able, your kidneys aren't able to work as well as they once did. All right. Do your notes.